All right, welcome to your Newsmax Daily for Tuesday, March 11th, 2025. It's the 70th day of the year, the 7th day of Lent and World Plumbing Day, created by the World Plumbing Council to recognize the importance of plumbing and the role it plays in keeping the world healthy. Thank goodness for plumbing, right? And if you are a plumber, kudos to you. Secretary of State Rubio, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, and some other U.S. officials are in Saudi Arabia today meeting with Ukrainian leaders about a ceasefire and the mineral rights deal, which I'll get more into in a moment. But back in Washington, the GOP-led House is working to pass the one big, beautiful bill that the president wants, or any spending bill, to avoid a possible government shutdown on Friday.
No one wants to shut the government down, and we are governing, doing the responsible thing as Republicans. I believe that the policies that we're putting forth are going to improve the economy and bring down costs for people. It takes a little while. We're in a transition period.
That's House Speaker Mike Johnson facing questions at the Capitol. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has a press briefing this afternoon, and she too will likely face questions about the economy and the big stock market sell-off. I told you last week, if you were paying attention, people were already expressing concern to me over the markets. And I said, once this gets going, the selling only leads to more selling. Let's begin with Finnerty.
It's been 50 days since Donald Trump took the oath of office, and we know that a lot of people who watch this show are retired, living on a fixed income. A lot of people are in the stock market, building toward retirement with savings and a 401k. They've reached out to me. Suddenly people are nervous. They're not panicked, but people are nervous. They've got faith in the president and the new administration. But the Dow today with its single worst day since 2022, dropping 890 points, almost 900 points. The Nasdaq also down by 4% today as the sell-off on Wall Street continues into a third week. Those are the facts. And we're suddenly hearing a word that no one wants to hear, a word that the previous administration, like so many other simple words, they couldn't seem to define.
Is the White House trying to change the common definition of a recession because next Thursday the GDP numbers coming out are going to show that we've been in a recession?
So let me say this, the strength of our labor market along with the other economic factors is what we generally see in a recession, or even what is not what we generally see in a recession.
What is exactly the White House's definition of a recession?
Again, I'm not going to define it from here.
We were in a recession at one point under Joe Biden. You might also remember the previous administration claiming that inflation was transitory. Take a look.
But I personally believe that this represents transitory factors.
As these transitory supply effects abate, inflation is expected to drop back toward our longer-run goal.
They continue to convey that they believe the impact will be temporary, transitory, however you want to refer to it.
They got away with that because everything in life really is transitory. But those were all lies in the moment. Inflation under Joe Biden hit 9%. That's the highest since Jimmy Carter. Gas set an all-time record, over $5 a gallon nationwide. Mortgage rates spiked at 8%. And Democrats today, worried about egg prices, must have amnesia because they seem to forget about the price of everything else at the grocery store over the last 4 years. And today, the other networks dusting off an old trick to scare people. Do you remember, for months leading up to the 2020 election, Joe Biden, Donald Trump, CNN and MSNBC would have the COVID death numbers right on the screen during every single show. And then suddenly, Joe Biden gets elected, he takes over, and poof, all the death trackers come down. Well, look what they just dusted off over at CNN today. The COVID death tracker has now become the Trump stock market tracker. Take a look.
As we hear the president being asked about a recession and he won't dismiss it, I mean, what are you seeing when it comes to that question?
Yeah, on Wall Street, it's called kitchen sinking it. You throw everything but the kitchen sink in it because you could still technically blame the Biden administration and policies of the Biden administration. Like, I'm only trying to put us on a right footing. So if he jawbones tariffs and worries and the talk of recession into, actually self-fulfilling prophecy, it might well force the Fed's hand.
I'm not sure who that guy is, some stock market analyst, I presume, but what you cannot see is they have him in a little box on the screen, and the CNN host is in another little box. And then 80% of the screen is a huge Dow, NASDAQ, and S&P ticker with a big red arrows pointing down. All right, back to Rob Finnerty.
Those stayed up for most of the day today. If you watch CNN, today was the end of the world. It was 1929 all over again, the Great Depression, Black Monday, 1987. But none of that is true. Here are the facts tonight that you will not see anywhere else. The Dow is down 5.75% over the last 30 days. But the Dow, the NASDAQ, and the S&P 500 are all still way up over the last 12 months. Here are the numbers. As of today, the S&P 500 over the last 12 months up 9.7%. The NASDAQ up 9.05%. And the Dow Jones Industrial Average that we just mentioned up 8.1% over the last 12 months. Those are the facts, and those numbers are available to anyone who wants to find them. The White House not mentioning those numbers today because Joe Biden was president during the majority of the last 12 months. Donald Trump's only been in office for 50 days. That's not a knock on Donald Trump. Those are just the facts. And the Joe Biden hangover is going to take a long time to wear off. He put us in a really bad spot. But for the first time in 50 days, the White House is having their very first messaging problem. And I even think that people are aware of this. I don't think that everyone out there is panicked, but I think that people are concerned. And this sort of hang in there, wait and see approach coming from the White House over the weekend shifted rapidly from this to something very different.
I hate to predict things like that. There is a period of transition because what we're doing is very big. We're bringing wealth back to America. That's a big thing. And there are always periods of, it takes a little time. It takes a little time. But I think it should be great for us. I mean, I think it should be great.
Okay, so that was very clever. That was Donald Trump over the weekend. He was asked if he thinks that a recession is coming, and he wouldn't commit to that. But the message today was much different, this time from Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. Take a look.
Anybody who bets against Donald Trump, it's like the same people who thought Donald Trump wasn't a winner a year ago. Donald Trump is a winner. He's going to win for the American people. That's just the way it's going to be. There's going to be no recession in America. What there's going to be is global tariffs are going to come down because President Trump has said, you want to charge us 100%? We're going to charge you 100%. And you know what they say? They say, no, don't charge us 100%. We'll bring ours down. We'll unleash America out to the world, grow our economy in a way we've never grown before.
All right, so the White House very clear today. They do not expect us to go into a recession as a country. They are also reminding Americans that on the last day of Donald Trump's first term, even with a global pandemic, inflation was at 1.4%. Gas was at $2.20 a gallon nationwide. Mortgage rates nationwide, the day he left, 2.80%. All those numbers would go up the second Joe Biden took office, and that's where we are today.
That is Rob Finnerty, host of Finnerty, 8 o'clock Eastern on Newsmax. 2.8% mortgages. If you're shopping for a mortgage today, the rate's around 6.7, 6.8%, down 3 basis points from last week, which was down a little bit from the week before that, after reaching 8% several months ago, as Rob mentioned. And as much as gas has come down the last few months, it's still $3.16 a gallon at the 7-Eleven down the road from my house here, and that's for regular. Stock market futures were in the green early this morning, turned red as the market opened, negative to flat as the market got going. Bitcoin was up, though, about $2,500 back over 81,000. Ethereum, XRP, and most other cryptocurrencies in the green this morning. By the way, President Trump announced on X that he'll be buying a Tesla today in support of Elon Musk, as the radical left lunatics are illegally and collusively trying to boycott Tesla. I retweeted the president's entire statement if you want to read it for yourself. Saudi Arabia is 7 hours ahead of wherever you are, unless you're outside the United States. So talks between the U.S. and Ukraine have likely wrapped up for the day. Wake Up America spoke about it with retired Brigadier General Blaine Holt.
I mean, this is where the rubber is going to start to meet the road around this negotiating table. Do you think we see anything come out of it?
Oh, I think we will. American leadership is not going to be relenting here. We're not going to go backwards. President Zelensky kind of stuttered. He kind of was probing and testing President Trump with the events of the last 2 weeks. But the military realities on the ground are what they are. And the Kursk events militarily are certainly ones that we should watch, because they're going to have to retreat. They're going to have to pull from Kursk because they're just overwhelmed with force. At the same time, there's going to be a lot more in the press that President Trump caused this because of the pause in aid, the pause in intel. No, that's just nonsense. There's intel sharing from UK, other NATO allies, and you don't just lose all your supplies overnight when we pause. What President Trump is doing is asserting himself, saying the killing will stop, and we're going to get to the table, and we're going to have a conclusion. And President Zelensky and Macron and Starmer from the UK, please listen up, because the United States is very firm in its position, and we're going to see this thing through to its end. And it's not out of love for Russia either. They're going to be tough to get to the table.
Yeah, and Fred, as we just heard Shelby mention in her report, Trump paused military aid to Ukraine, followed shortly by suspension of intelligence sharing. But just yesterday, as she said, Trump said the U.S. has just about lifted the intelligence pause. Pennsylvania Republican Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick also addressed the issue on CBS yesterday. Take a listen to what he had to say.
I know you feel very strongly about supporting Ukraine in its fight against Russia. Ben Hodges, who's a retired general who commanded U.S. Army Europe, said he's having a hard time understanding how withholding intelligence and military support from Ukraine advances strategic interests or helps make America great.
So what I suspect is happening here, and I could be proven wrong, is that this is an escalate to de-escalate tactic by the administration to bring these parties to the table and to come to a conclusion, a just conclusion, which means success and victory for Ukraine. And I want to emphasize that. And I get asked, well, what does that mean?
Yep.
What victory means for me is Vladimir Putin regrets his decision to invade Ukraine.
Fred, do you agree with the congressman there? What do you think?
Well, I think Trump put incredible pressure on Zelensky to get him to support Trump's objective of getting an immediate ceasefire. And I think that succeeded. It's time to turn back on the intelligence sharing, the military aid. The problem now is Russia. Russia is increasing its attacks on Ukraine despite Trump's peace efforts. There has to be maximum pressure against Russia right now to stop this war. Zelensky's people have to be reminded during the Saudi Arabia meetings that they have to stay on board. The problem now is Russia, and I think Trump's going to have to turn to that and also deliver a message to Putin that Trump is his only chance to stop this war. There'll be no other official on the political scene in the near future who will give Russia any opportunity to stop this war. There's a brief window in time that Putin can do this. Trump has to urge him to take advantage of it.
That's former National Security Council Chief of Staff Fred Fleitz on Wake Up America. President Trump has said Ukraine needs to show that it wants peace and to agree to the minerals deal. Ukraine is proposing a mutual pause with Russia on long-range strikes from the air and sea, but as he said, Russia is the one now, no surprise, who is not showing signs of cooperating so far. Meanwhile, overnight, ahead of today's talks, Ukraine launched a strike on an airport in Moscow. There was a lot of talk yesterday about all the ridiculous comments, and I should say there was still a lot of talk about all the ridiculous comments and actions of various Democrats on various mainstream media outlets and social platforms, mostly from over the weekend. None more so than the Congresswoman from Texas, a woman of color who is trying so hard to bring attention to herself that I'm not going to give her any. But I'm sure you know who I'm talking about. Carl Higbie has more.
If there was a leader in the Democrat Party right now, someone would have told her to shut up and stop doing interviews. That's how you know there's nobody running this party, because she's out there still talking and she doesn't even know what she's saying.
They continue to say things like the illegals and that they broke the law coming in. But what they're not telling the American people is that it is a civil violation. It is not a criminal violation to enter the country illegally. It's not a criminal. It's a crime. It's not a crime.
Yep. Yes, it is. And to think this woman makes our laws and has bragged about how educated she is in the past.
I currently hold an honorary doctorate. I also hold a Juris Doctorate. I also hold a bachelor's. I also technically hold the rank of Lieutenant Colonel in the Civil Air Patrol.
Doesn't show, but since your overeducated self doesn't seem to know anything, 8 U.S. Code 1325, any alien who 1, enters or attempts to enter the United States at any time or place other than designated by immigration officers, or 2, excludes or eludes examination or inspection by immigration officer, or 3, attempts to enter or obtains entry into the United States by a willfully false or misleading representation to the willful concealment of material fact, shall, not may, shall, for the first commission of any such offense, because it's a law, be fined under Title 18 or imprisoned not more than 6 months or both. You can't go to jail for something that's not a crime. And you know what is super crazy about this? I would expect this woman to know that. She ain't as ghetto as she wants you to think. She can do the not like us dance. This is like the most cringy thing. Not like who? And who is us? I just want to get a bead, because, like, what the heck is she talking about? Jasmine Crockett is from a wealthy suburban neighborhood. She went to a private school that costs $35,000 a year, followed by Rhodes College that runs you a cool $55K a year. So what do you mean, not like us? Not like who? Not like the 1%? Is that what she meant? She's out there in like a designer pantsuit with nice handbags in the halls of Congress, acting like she's from the streets. They Democrats, they not like us, rational people.
That's my man, Carl Higbie, host of Frontline, 5 o'clock Eastern on Newsmax. He slipped her name in there, and it bothers me even more that she's from the great state of Texas. But let's go back to her patting herself on the back there. She has a bachelor's degree. Okay. She has an honorary doctorate degree. Let me read this to you straight from the Google machine. An honorary doctorate is a doctorate-level honorary degree that's awarded by a university to an individual who has made contributions to a university, a particular field, or to society, unlike a typical degree that is earned through academic achievements. There you go. Unlike an actual doctorate that is earned through academic achievement. Anyway, there is a much bigger, much more concerning story involving another Democrat, another more prominent Democrat, who, by the way, also has an honorary doctorate. His is from Brooklyn College. If you haven't already heard this or have seen this, it is really disturbing, disgusting, shocking, unacceptable. Pick a word. It's all of the above. Bob Brooks has the story.
Time for the Brooks Breakdown. Let's talk about this. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, he held a rally in Wisconsin this past Friday night. He is on a national speaking tour called, quote, Fight the Oligarchy. And what I'm about to show you, this one was tough to put some commentary to this. This is crazy. Bernie Sanders had a band perform on stage before he came out. The band is called Against Me. It is led by a trans person who goes by the name Laura Jane Grace, formerly known as Thomas James Gable. The reason I'm telling you about this is because this is the title of the song that was played. Quote, Your God, God's blank. I think you can fill in the blank. The lyrics to this song are absurd. Many would consider it anti-Christian, even as far as demonic. They are vile. I have the whole transcript. Can't put it on TV. Here's part of that performance.
Does your God have a big fat? Cause it feels like he's me.
So you heard that correctly. Does your God have a big fat blank? Because it feels like he's blanking me. That happened at a political rally. I have some more of the lyrics to the song. We've blanked out the profanity and sexual words to it. Here's some of it. When he whips out his blank, does your world fall to its knees? Does he shoot blank of honey and blank twice Easter Sunday? I'm going to give you just a taste of a little more here. I'm not going to take it any further. Quote, can he blank a shotgun blast and shoot salvation up your blank? I mean, what is written in this song is some seriously twisted stuff. I wouldn't have to answer for that on Judgment Day, I can tell you that. If you wish to know the full extent, you can look up the lyrics online. It's sick. What I can't wrap my head around, though, is why this band and why the song was chosen by Senator Bernie Sanders and his team. What was the intent? What was the upside? Like it or not, Bernie Sanders is one of the most prominent Democrats there is right now. He is part of the Democrat leadership. He represents their party and what they're selecting to broadcast to voters or potential voters. I can't believe it. And I want to bring this up. You probably remember when comedian Tony Hinchcliffe, he made some jokes about the Latin community at the Trump rally at MSG that some would consider to have been offensive. The liberal media, they tried to make a huge story out of that. They did. So I got to ask everybody, where is the outrage about what you saw on your screen and you heard? Senator Bernie Sanders and his fellow Democrats had a band on stage mocking God in a song laced with extremely offensive language and profanity. Man, could you imagine if a Republican did the same exact thing? I mean, just do what Bernie Sanders did and the outrage would be all over the place. It would be the biggest story without question today. And I also would have to guess that if Republicans, anyone did that, they would lose voters over it. Or whoever the senator was that did exactly what Bernie Sanders did. I kind of felt, just so you all know watching, a little gross showing you all that today. But that is what is going on inside of the Democrat Party. So like it or not, had to bring it up. I don't know if I've ever seen anything like this politically at a rally ever, anywhere. And I feel especially bad for any children who may have been in attendance in the audience. I have no idea what was going on.
That's Bob Brooks, co-host of American Agenda, with the Brooks Breakdown on Bernie Sanders. And I'm sure there was some Birkenstock-wearing, Ben & Jerry's eating tree hugger who brought their kid or kids there to see the great Bernie Sanders and ended up exposing the kid to some freak show singing about God's penis. That's the word, well, you know, they called it something else, but that's the word that Bob wasn't saying. Very nice. On yesterday's Newsmax Daily, you heard from DJ Daniel, the 13-year-old cancer survivor from President Trump's address to Congress last week. Lydia Serrani spoke with another person that was honored that night at the president's address as well, Helen Comperatore, the wife of Corey Comperatore, who was shot and killed by bullets that were meant for President Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania.
Helen Comperatore. Helen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Your husband was a hero in life as well as in death, yet Democrats didn't stand up. They didn't acknowledge you. They didn't acknowledge your daughters, along with the other special guests. How shocking was that behavior to you?
Oh, it was awful. It was disgusting to see and sit there and witness.
What went through your mind? Could, you know, even for the cancer survivor, the 13-year-old boy. I mean, I choked up when I watched you and your daughters, like probably millions of Americans, DJ Daniel, to see them have so much hatred in their heart that they couldn't even acknowledge. I mean, we saw the previous administration, the way you were all, I mean, what do you think's going on with our country?
It's sad. It's sad what's going on with our country when you can't stand up for a little boy who is, I can testify, is adorable and so sweet. That kid just went around all day giving us all hugs as we shared our stories and cried. And I will never forget him. I will never forget him. And how they could just sit there. I mean, where's your humanity? Where is it? That's just evil. It's just pure evil.
As the president said in his speech, your late husband gave up his life for all of you. Instinctively using his body as a human shield when the shots rang out, you were there. I was sitting in the anchor chair when it all unfolded. There's still now more questions than answers regarding the investigation into your husband's murder, into the attempt on the president's life. What do you think about the investigation thus far? Have you heard from the FBI? What are they telling you?
I have heard nothing from the FBI. I have not heard a word from the FBI since the day we left. As a matter of fact, I just received my husband's cell phone yesterday, Friday, from my lawyer. My lawyer finally got my cell phone back for me from him.
What do you think about that investigation? It's hard to believe that this, like, he acted alone, right? And that he was up there on that roof for so long, and you had people saying, hey, what is that guy doing up there? What do you think? Are you skeptical that this person acted alone?
Very. Yeah, I know in my heart he did not act alone. I know there's way more to this story than what I've been told.
Also, we learned overnight that there was an armed man who was shot by Secret Service outside of the White House. Thank God the president was not there. He's at Mar-a-Lago. Are you worried that President Trump, there could be another attempt on his life so far that we know of? There has been two.
Yes, I'm very scared for our president. Very scared for him.
What do you think Corey would be saying to you right now? Keep up the good fight, everything that you're going through, because clearly you came on with us today because you want to draw attention to the investigation, because I know you do want answers. We all want answers. President Trump, by the way, he says he wants some answers. Let's take a listen to what the president says about the investigation.
So they are giving me a report next week sometime, and I do believe I'll be releasing. I want to release the report. A lot of people have asked that question. You had one who had 3 apps, 2 of which were foreign, supposedly. The other one had 7 or 6 cell phones. And I don't have 6 cell phones. And why would somebody have 6 cell phones? So we're going to be releasing a report on that soon.
So he was talking about that shooting, that potential shooting that almost happened in Florida, the second assassination attempt. There's so many questions. Why do you think, I mean, it's been so long. I mean, July, and here we are in March, and still the FBI hasn't even sat down. You were there. You were there when it happened.
Yes. My kids were there, and nobody should ever have to see that. Nobody should ever have to go through that. And we need answers. We should have answers. We should have something by now. I mean, it's going to be 7 months, and we've been told nothing. And I know that they know something. We know it was a Secret Service failure that day. They failed. But there was more to that. There was so much more.
Helen Comperatore, and I would agree with her. There is a lot more to it than a Secret Service failure. And that's most likely why we haven't heard more about it yet. Is it that complex, or do they really not know? Or is it a cover-up? Like she said, we need to demand answers. And it's now going to be up to Secret Service Director Kevin Curran, Deputy Director Bongino, and FBI Director Kash Patel to find out and tell us. And I'll squeeze in one more segment here.
The deep state is officially on notice. Tulsi Gabbard has stripped privileges of deep state actors, including the infamous 51 intel officials who claimed the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard writing, per the president's directive, I have revoked security clearances and barred access to classified information for Antony Blinken, Jake Sullivan, Lisa Monaco, Mark Zaid, Norman Eisen, Letitia James, Alvin Bragg, and Andrew Wiseman, along with the 51 signers of the Hunter Biden disinformation letter. The president's daily brief is no longer being provided to former President Biden. Matthew, your thoughts on making this move coming from the Trump administration?
Seems fairly straightforward from Tulsi Gabbard here. This was what Trump wanted, and every single person on this list despises Trump and tried to prevent him from being elected at various junctures. And I don't know why Letitia James needs access to classified information. I'm sure that Joe Biden is currently asleep right now. We may literally never see Joe Biden again. I don't think he's dying for his classified brief, daily presidential brief. So it seems fairly uncontroversial.
Definitely not on National Napping Day. But Jason, let me ask you this. I mean, those 51 intel officers, they did basically push that Russian disinformation of the Hunter laptop situation. I mean, it makes sense that you would take away their access to accessing intelligence briefings.
Well, it's certainly not surprising. I mean, we knew that this was going to happen. We knew that the incoming Trump administration was going to be, focused on some level of retribution. And I think this is relatively petty. But one thing I will say is that I think in the long run, this is what makes investigative journalism even more important. You know, you can't just rely on reports that you get. Like, people need to go out and do investigative journalism, find answers where you're not going to get it from some intelligence report.
Well, Tiana, they were looking at investigative journalism when it was the New York Post, basically going after, basically saying, look, this is Hunter laptop information. It's not Russian disinformation.
I think Jason's agreeing with us, right? It's the blob is real. Look, and there are lots of times when we as reporters will go to a NatSec expert and ask them for their opinion. And I don't even know if it's always political bias so much as it is professional bias. But the blob is real, and it's called the blob for a reason. And just in general, the idea that like a security clearance is something you have, you get, and you get to keep unless you tick someone off. Like, no, like it should automatically expire after 4 years. Why does Alvin Bragg need a security clearance anyway? It just makes sense.
Tiana Lowe of the Washington Examiner with Mercedes Schlapp and the rest of the Right Squad, 10 p.m. Eastern on Newsmax. Check it out. After having lunch with Vice President Vance, today President Trump is speaking at the Business Roundtable quarterly meeting in D.C. this afternoon. And again, this afternoon, there is a press conference at the White House with Secretary Leavitt. In Sonoma County, California, 2 schools were evacuated yesterday after an online threat was made by a student's father. Come on, people. This is Sergeant Juan Valencia of the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office.
Said he was going to show up after school with the weapon and to make sure that the sheriff's deputies were there.
The sheriff's office didn't share details of the threat, but confirmed that it came from the father of the student. School officials said there will be extra support staff on hand when students return to school, which I believe was this morning. And if you are starting to look at flights for spring or summer travel, if you're a Southwest Airlines traveler, especially because they don't charge for luggage, that is now going to change. For the first time ever, Southwest Airlines is going to start charging passengers to check bags. This is going to happen on tickets purchased on or after May 28th. Southwest customers in all but the top-tier fare class, which I didn't even know they had, will have to pay for check bags. A lot of people like Southwest Airlines. A lot of people hate Southwest Airlines. Some people put up with it just so they don't have to pay for bags, which is a big expense. But now Southwest is going to start charging for bags. By the way, the airline industry as a whole took in more than $5 billion in suitcase money, charging to put your suitcase on the plane, which I've always thought was a bunch of BS anyway. All right, keep up with all of the news throughout the day and breaking developments on Newsmax, N2, and at Newsmax.com. It all begins each and every morning with Wake Up America, followed by National Report, all the way through Finnerty, Greg Kelly reports at 9 Eastern, and so much more, with expert analysis from people like Senator Rick Santorum, foreign policy expert Fred Fleitz, Brigadier General Blaine Holt, Professor Dershowitz, Judge Napolitano, and many, many others. I'm Tony Marino. Enjoy the rest of your day or night. Thank you for listening as always, and keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
Information. Truth. Is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.